For a moment he didn't know where he was. His heart was pounding and his eyes stinging as he peered into the surrounding darkness. Slowly he was able to make out the familiar stone walls, the grungy toilet, the overhead bunk bed, and the forbidding metal door of his cell. Featherstone let out a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat from his brow with an already soaked bedsheet. "Thank God," he said to himself. "It's only prison." Featherstone's night had been filled with bad dreams. He remembered seeing hundreds of human hands, pale and disembodied, reaching through the bars of a dingy prison cell. Then he saw himself on the floor of what looked like a hotel room, his wrists and ankles bound together with wire. He was surrounded by 4 or 5 conservatively dressed people, professional people. One of them, a man, put a gun to Featherstone's head and pulled the trigger. He felt the pain, saw the blood spurt past his eyes. Then he woke up. Over the course of his often troubled 39 years, Featherstone had grown accustomed to nightmares like this. But it had been a while since he'd seen the images so clearly. Not since the early 1970s, anyway, when, after returning from a stint in Vietnam, his near-sleepless nights were frequently filled with severed body parts, glistening blood, and the sounds of incoming fire. Over the years, he'd talked to many psychiatrists about these dreams, and they all told him the same thing. Post-traumatic stress syndrome, they called it, using the popular post-Vietnam euphemism for battle fatigue. As the years wore on and Featherstone gained distance from his war memories, the bad dreams subsided. More recent psychiatric evaluations gave him a clean bill of health. The nightmares would recur only if he were to engage in an anxiety-inducing undertaking, according to a psychiatrist he'd seen just weeks earlier. An anxiety-inducing undertaking. Featherstone had to laugh when he heard it put that way. With his 11th grade education, it was a phrase he'd never have used himself, though he had to admit in its own cold and clinical way it was a perfect description of what he was about to embark on. Featherstone got up from his mattress and made his way to a porcelain sink near the toilet. He let the water run until it was good and cold, then cupped his hands under the faucet and splashed his face. He looked at his reflection in the mirror and saw the familiar crescent scar on his neck, the disheveled sandy blonde hair, the droopy mustache, and hazel, forlorn eyes of a hardened convict. The cool water ran down his chest and back, sending a ripple of pleasure through his taut 5'9" frame. The images of violence and terror from his dreams had already begun to recede. Mickey Featherstone was ready to face the day.